Are you
Oh,
sure?
yeah, we're on. We just
Hi.
started. Hi, Dr. Hillary
Hi.
Frederickson in New Orleans by a poolside, enjoying life. This is very good for your GI system and your mood, which is what we're talking about on Doctors in Demand today, right?
It is. I'm resetting my I'm rebalancing work with play this weekend and doing a lot of dancing and music listening in New Orleans, but there's children playing in the pool. So if there's some children noises in the back, they're not mine. I'm not ignoring them, but they're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, that is kind of a good parenting tip. If your kids are in the pool, you should have eyes on them, right?
They're
That's
not
like the
just,
thing we're supposed to do.
for everyone to know, they're not mine.
So today, really important topic. I think that we all know this just innately in our bodies, right? That the way we feel is very connected with our GI system. And you'll see this as children, elementary school, kids in preschool, they'll go to the school nurse and say, I have a stomach ache when they're worried about something, right? So you have like kids with stomach aches, you're kind of like, oh, are they stressed? Are they feeling stressed? You get that. Or people will say, oh, I felt like I got kicked in the stomach when they get bad news. Or, when you're nervous for a presentation, or, maybe you're getting married or something like that, and you like have to like run to the bathroom, like your GI system feels it, right? So we get that connection because we speak it in our expressions, right? I always like that. What other expressions are there about GI connected with mood?
You are what you eat.
Well,
I
that is a
mean,
really
isn't that
important.
like also just like you feel the way you eat, right? But yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Remember when we learned from, our old naturopathic professors were really good at this. And this was before any evidence was out about the microbiome and serotonin in your GI system. This was a while ago that we were in medical school. And I was really struck by that when they would say, if someone has depression, treat the gut. Treat the gut. They were always telling us, treat the gut. Like every system we learned about, they said, treat the gut. And now we kind of get that. Like we should be treating the gut with everything that happens with people. And
I love
especially
that we have somebody who just wrote in to help us out. The expression "I'm sick to my stomach" or "This
of
makes me sick
course,
to my stomach," right?
because you feel sick to your stomach, or my stomach
When you
turned
get bad
over. I have butterflies in my stomach, right?
butterflies in
All
my
of these
stomach.
things. We get this as a culture, but then when it comes to depression, anxiety, we're kind of like, I don't feel good. I don't know exactly what to do. And so today we're talking about treat the gut. It's the thing, right? And here's one thing, as I was prepping this a little bit, that I thought was so interesting, is that the cycle is sort of back and forth, right? It's we have this thing where it goes, our GI gives signals to the brain, and then the brain also gives signals to our GI system. So it's like this whole setup that's constantly in communication is what we want to work on. So there's kind of two ways to approach it, right? It's like treat your gut and really think about our gut health, and also treat our mind and calm our mind, and get these practices on board to calm our whole bodies, and that will heal your gut. So there's like two ways to approach it, right? And we always talk about this too, that I like, is the glass half full, glass half empty. Had a patient this morning and she had disappointing news. So I'm always, I need to be careful of these topics we choose, because then someone comes in kind of expressing it. I have to be really careful. She came in, she said, well, I'm having a bad day because I had a disappointment. She's going through an IVF cycle, and they found out something didn't quite work out as planned. But it really, to me, I was like, no, actually, that's pretty good news. So it just, she was expecting something, it didn't go as planned, and there was that disappointment. And she said, well, I'm always glass half full. And you know me, I'm like annoying. I'm glass half.
You are.
Like
You're
I'm
not
a half
annoying.
full
You're
person.
not annoying. You're just glass half full. You
I
are
feel like
a true internal optimist.
yeah, it's kind of like that. So I'm sure, even in really bad situations, I just see that way. Like, I'm like, okay, it could be worse or something. I'm always thinking that way. And like, so I was talking to this patient, I'm like, well, I just want to tell you this story, like the Ellie Weissel story, where him and his wife found out, and he's that famous author of Night. And he found out that all his money, all his savings of his whole foundation, their whole personal finances were all gone in that Ponzi scheme of made up. And so I always think of this story. because he just found out, it's his life work, his foundation money was gone. You get the phone call and you're like, oh, this is bad, right? And that would be one of those stressful moments in life. And he sort of turned to his wife and said, well, we've seen worse, And so there's that attitude of it, right? It's like that attitude is going to make you, he's super sharp as he aged. He's in good, you can see this guy's like living life really, really well. That's what we want in life. We want that kind of attitude. You get the worst news ever and you're like, I've seen worse, right? So that's glass half full. That's the example of it. So anyway, with your GI system, if you are automatically set up to the glass half full, you're probably healing your GI at a better rate than somebody who gets that kind of news like today, this morning, and had a harder time, right? And it's just like under the dark cloud. This person's telling me about how she's like really under a dark cloud, and it's like she had to take a day off work yesterday from it, all of this. So I think that's the first lesson in here is like, what can you do for your mind? Are you a glass half full or a glass half empty? Hill, you're kind of in between there.
I'm in between. Okay. I have to work on it. It doesn't innately come half full. Like the voice in my head is sometimes initially pessimistic. And so I have to really like work on changing it around. And I've always wondered if that is somewhat of the PCOS setup. Like, is that some of that anxiety or depression that you read about? Not to blame, or I'm just trying to find a headset because this is really loud, getting loud out here. Not to blame as an illness, but like we do know that there's these predispositions. So it's interesting. I don't know, but it's something that I work on. It's not innate in me. I have to work on continuing to keep my looking at life glass half full. I love life. I have fun. I've never been treated for anxiety or depression, but I can get in the habit of depressive thoughts. So so much of me has turned towards food health, detoxification, gut health as a means to reduce anxiety, reduce depression, feel good.
And so we do know this from data, right? Is that our American diets really do set us up for more anxiety, depression. It actually is diet related. We do know this. And why? It's the high sugar, low fiber, high fat. That just got so much louder.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Why? I don't know. You're better this way. Yeah. Oh, now you're muted though. Oh no. Anyway, so we do know that the low fiber is a big problem because our gut bacteria use fiber as food source, right? So our gut bacteria has so much to do with mood. You cannot address an anxiety depression disorder without addressing the gut flora. We know that now. And so that's one thing to think about. Like, are you eating enough fiber? So if you're out there and you're thinking, I tend to the glass half empty kind of thing, maybe if I eat more fiber, that might help me. I think that's a really good approach.
Eating more fiber, using the proper supplements, making sure you're not eating foods you're sensitive to, right? But I had a patient the other day. I love it when I was working with a teenager and she had a total aha moment. And it's sometimes hard to convince teenagers about eating and their connectivity to how they feel. But she had been kind of on a really good program for about 30 days. And then she slipped off the program for about 30 days, did more soda, junk food, and stopped taking her probiotic. And she just said, oh my goodness, I totally realized like it massively changed my anxiety. Like, so she's like, so she had gone back by the time I had seen her, she had been on, off, and then back on again. And she's like, when I went back on, it was just like eating well and my probiotic, like I just felt so much less anxious. And it shows up for her. I love how kids can articulate stuff. It shows up for her if she's doubting herself in a social setting, if she's questioning how she's looking. It's so fascinating to hear the way anxiety shows up for people, and that she could totally relate that her diet and her supplements made it so she felt less of that. It's so beautiful.
It is. It's like when people make those dietary changes and they feel really good, and we all do this as human nature, and then we kind of drop off, and then we go back in our old patterns, and we're like, why are we not sleeping, why are we depressed, why are we feeling, and then it's sort of like, oh, because I have been eating the ice cream every day again, or whatever, you know what I mean? It's really like that. So people connect with sugar a lot when they are in a sugar pattern, which, who knows, if it is it because you're super stressed and the sugar makes you feel better for a little bit, is that why you do it? However you start doing it, then it also makes you more depressed or more anxious. So it's this very clear connection with people. So I think that this is where diet really needs to be addressed. But even if you're eating a supposed good diet, like, all the data is like, okay, more vegetable, plant matter, and the more Mediterranean diet, that's associated with less anxiety, depression. That's real. That's real. Like, we know that. And why is that? It's because it's a very anti-inflammatory diet. So say you're eating the Mediterranean diet and you're a person who reacts to tomatoes, which, by the way, unfortunately, a lot of people react to tomatoes. It's the worst because they're so delicious, especially in the summertime in New England. It's like
We're
the worst.
really high in histamine, and histamine is a neurotransmitter that it acts as, it can be very stimulating and excitatory and cause people significant anxiety. It is a direct correlation. So people get really sad when they see some of these things, if they have anxiety and depression, and we're trying to look at specific foods. So we use food sensitivity testing as a way of guiding that process, helping people narrow it down, right?
Yeah. And so tomatoes.
It's true, like in New England, tons of tomatoes. Here too, I had a patient that was really, really flared. She had made her own salsas and everything. And like, how can you just want to be so excited about that? That's so beautiful and bountiful. And unfortunately for her, it was just, it pushed her over the edge. She just was eating a little bit too much.
Yeah,
and so it is.
There's a big, tomatoes is in that plant family that there's a big issue in our culture with this. That plant family, the tomatoes and peppers and a bunch of our foods that we eat, is also the same plant family as tobacco and some other more toxic things that we take in. And our body tends to react strongly to those chemicals in that plant family. And so that's the Solanaceae family, or the nightshades, right? And so that's a really common one that causes inflammation in people's guts and joints. So in the fall time here, and this even does happen to me, and I try not to talk about it. I try to pretend this doesn't happen, but like August, September, my hands hurt a lot more than all the rest of the year because of the tomato eating. And so even somebody who has a healthy GI tract, you eat the tomatoes, it can cause inflammation. It's true. So that's one to check out. Like, I think 25% of people with rheumatoid arthritis, they take out that plant family and they feel better for their joint pain. So tomato is just one example of many, many things that could be causing you these problems, but is really linked with that kind of like mind-gut connection. This mind-gut connection is totally real, and it's about fixing our diets. And Hillary and I are really all about fixing the diet according to the person. But, if you're a person listening out there, I just think it's really good to start with some fiber. It's so basic, but if your gut flora doesn't have the fuel it needs, what are you doing taking all these probiotics and fermented foods and stuff? You really need to increase fiber. And the American diet has a very low fiber intake, and that could be like a really big change. It's healthy for you. It's anti-cancer. It makes you go to the bathroom more. Fiber is a really great thing to look at in our diets. And adding it to grams, horrifying how low you get. That's a really good exercise. Have you ever done that in a day?
Oh, yes. Like yesterday, I was traveling in the United States. It's like such a joke if you don't prepare. Fortunately, I had made a smoothie in the morning, so I had fiber, and I added fiber to my smoothie.
Mm-hmm.
But I think from there on out, I went out to a restaurant. Like, I think it's just really low, really low.
Yeah, fiber intake is generally really low. We kind of have to think about it to add it in. But a healthy diet does have a good amount of fiber in it. If you eat enough plant-based foods, you do get good fiber.
Meaning, if you're eating a big bowl with lots of colored greens, if you're eating foods, and like we love smoothies and smoothie making. So if you're making really good or using plant fiber in those, like we tend to add half a cucumber. I like handfuls of parsley. You don't, but like some kind of green.
No. Yeah,
That
and berries and so fiber, let's bump it down on the fiber, because people are always like, oh, should I eat, the cereal in the morning that says high fiber? That's not what we're really promoting. We're talking about eating carrots and apples and bananas. Citrus fruits have lots of fiber. I was trying to think of things people don't think about, like onions, garlic, leeks, oats, peas, beans, lentils. All that stuff has good fiber. So I was thinking about, what do we not eat a lot of, or what do you not count as fiber so much? But a citrus fruit, that's delicious.
delicious. All right, I am
You're
gonna
gonna
pop.
go.
Yeah, it's getting like there's so much distraction. It's so great. Anyway, this is just the beginning of the conversation, really, because and it's so awesome that it's coming around. People are really getting the memo here, but there's so much to learn about your gut and how you feel. So tune on for more, right?
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.